Hashtag Impact invites you in to eavesdrop on raw and honest conversations on creating positive change in the world. I am your host, Regina Larco, and together with guests and hosts from around the globe, we encourage you to get curious about what making an impact means to you. Join the conversation and share your voice at hashtagimpact.com. Today, I'm sitting down with Stephanie Cox. She is the country director of Ashoka Austria, that is part of the world's largest network of social entrepreneurs active in over 90 countries. Before leading Ashoka Austria, she built and scaled Ashoka's youth focus across Austria, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. Her work centers on helping people see themselves as change makers and building bridges across sectors and generations. Previously, she co-founded TEDx Donauinsel and Chancenreich, Europe's largest career fair for refugees, and served as one of the youngest members of the Austrian parliament. Stephanie was also named a young global shaper by the World Economic Forum, and she continues to advocate for social entrepreneurship, leadership, and systemic change across the globe. Welcome to Hashtag Impact, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. I need to get you as my PR agent. You did such an thanks for all, for kind of putting kind of my last, 10 years in a nutshell. I love that. Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's such a pleasure and privilege. And actually, I'm so glad we finally, actually have someone also from the Ashoka team here in the hot seat at Hashtag Impact. You must know, when I first started Hashtag Impact, when I started my research, I'm going to start this podcast, and that was around 2016. I met a lot of people and I told a lot of people about my idea. And there was that organization that was mentioned to me over and over again. You have to speak to Ashoka. You have to get someone from Ashoka on the channel. And I mean, oh my God, I can't believe it's been a decade now and finally we're doing this. Yeah. But it's, for me, kind of like a really beautiful full circle moment to learn from, a fellow change maker. I mean, that's what you are. And everyone's a change maker. That is Ashoka's slogan.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering, I mean, can you pinpoint, when did you first actually see yourself as a change maker?
Oh, I love that question. That's a question I love asking myself because
Yeah.
that highlights that everyone out there can drive change and is a change maker, because we've all had that moments in life. And the moment you are trying to pinpoint in my life, that was actually, I think I was around 7 or 8 years old. So looking into kind of my life story, I was born in Sydney, Australia, but I grew up in Austria. So people get confused. It's like Austria and Australia. So I'm kind of Austria alien. Um, and so I grew up actually. So my parents moved from Sydney, Australia to Stetteldorf am Wagram in Austria. So it's a village north of Vienna with 1,000 inhabitants. So quite different to Sydney. And what I found myself in there was a lot of boundaries, especially as a young woman or as a girl. And you need to know, I have 4 brothers. So I grew up in an environment where I saw what my brothers were allowed to do and what they were invited to do. And that was the first time where I noticed that I'm kind of a change maker, or let's put it that way, that I need to raise my voice and take action, is when I was excluded and my other female friends from certain customs. And so what I did then was I kind of found some allies in the village, beginning from the priest, the like, because it's a village, like there are not a lot of people who take action there. And then there were like other people who are, and especially also my brothers and my male friends, where we were like, hey, we need to change this. I want to also be part of this. And it's called Ratschen. I don't know if people who listen to this podcast know it. It's like around Easter, you have like this little tools where you make a lot of noise, and so there's a lot of a story behind it, but I'm not going to go into that. But the thing is
And the
that you
village,
earn,
yes.
that you
And
earn quite
sorry
some
to add
money.
on, it's such a childhood memory for me as well, because my dad's side of the family, they are from Lower Austria. And so we would
Oh,
always spend Easter holidays in the countryside. You know what's so interesting? I never questioned it, you know? Isn't that
mm,
interesting? So
mm,
we grew up around the same time, right? I'm maybe a little bit older than you. And there would be the boys of the village that would walk around in the village,
yes,
and they would make that noise with these things, right? With this Ratschen,
Ratschen, you call them. Let's call them
Ratschen, yeah,
Ratschen. Yeah, they're
yeah.
like these
But it
wooden
was
things which make noise. Yeah.
yes, and they instead of the bells, right? Because the
Yes.
bells were not ringing during that time because of all this the religious background. So and then I never questioned that it was only my brother invited to this. I actually never questioned it. Isn't that sad? Like I'm so glad that you actually questioned that and that you said, well, why can't I also be part of this? Right?
It's interesting because
Yeah.
I think that's the point where when we say everyone a change maker, you need to have this moment where you realize, wait, I can I can do
Yeah.
something. And that's the moment when I realized, wait, this is, I believe this is not fair, but it's not only me, it's also my other female friends who are not allowed to join. So
Mm.
starting to question it, you start having conversations, and when you start having conversations, you start becoming allies, and that's where you actually start a movement. Like there's literature out there like how to start a movement. Look at like a
Yeah.
really famous TEDx talk where you say it needs the second or third person, like it needs followers, and you can be starting a movement, but you need people to follow you. And that happened there. And it's interesting that you're saying that you didn't question it, because a lot of other people didn't question it. And after the moment I had then when I was finally allowed to join, and
Mm.
then I earned my first, like, kind of, you got like, back then, I guess it was, I don't know, we still had shillings,
Get some
like it was
treats,
before the
right?
euros.
Some
So it
shillings
was like,
and some yeah.
I guess, I don't know, was it 20 euros? Was it
No,
30?
but
I
it
don't
was
know.
a
But
big deal. I remember
yes,
that my brother coming back with these sweets and with some money,
yes,
and then he
yes.
was always though in our family, he had to share it with me.
Oh, okay. You at least said that. But
Maybe
the thing is,
yeah.
in the end, what happened then was, and why it was kind of this, why it was such a crucial moment in my life, is because I realized, wait, wait, wait. So for me, raising the voice for myself and others, A, I
Mm,
can change something, and B, it really planted the seed within me, and also the perspective of like, what else do I want to change? And that's
yeah.
when I also approached the fire brigade, because behind of the house I grew up in, there was the house of the fire brigade, and only boys were allowed to join. And then I was like, okay, it's not that I want to join them right now, but I don't. There are other girls in the village who would like to join and are not allowed to, and we did the same there. And females are allowed to be part of the fire brigade now. And it's kind of, for me, what I learned in kind of the small village is that you really need to raise your voice and take action, and important, not alone. It's always about doing it with others, and it's at least trying it. And this has been kind of the red thread in my life of like
Mm,
being a voice also for others if they don't have a voice, but not only for them, but bringing them along. A, and B, taking action. And often it's just the first step, because taking the first step, you will learn what it needs. So you need to take the first step to be able to learn more about the challenge and the solution.
yeah. And it takes courage though, right? It makes me think of the Muttankstelle.
Mm.
Yeah. How would you translate that even
Courage
into
fuel
English?
station. I would say courage fuel station. So I guess you're referring, like, we have an event. We started an event format at Ashoka right now, which is called Courage Fuel Station, because we said or it's something I've experienced myself, is that in times where so much is changing, a lot of people are overwhelmed, not only by the changes, but often the feeling of lack of power they have. And so I really believe if you have spaces, people, communities where you can fuel up your courage and or find other people you can take action with, it makes a difference. At least it made a difference in my life. And I've seen it in the last 20 years that I needed these fuel stations, these courage fuel stations, and I had them. So I have this big privilege right now with my role at Ashoka and in an organization where it's always about how to create solutions, how to support people who have a solution, and to create this courage fuel stations.
And it is a lot of young people that you engage with as well, not only, but also. Where would you say, and especially like you're still very young. I mean, we are very young, Stephanie, you and me, but we have a couple of, I would say, I don't know, how is it for you? Like, if I even just think of the time I started this podcast, like now around a decade ago, right? I definitely feel there were some shifts at how I also maybe approach change making or how I look at it. And what is so interesting about your story, and I really invite everyone to just connect with you also directly and engage a bit with all this amazing work you already did in different aspects of of society, in politics, from a civic society place, from a startup, like entrepreneurial space, right? So you have looked at change making from so many different angles. You have now also been in the change making game since you were, I mean, 7, 8 years old, right? How would you say has your own relationship with that solution focused driving change changed in any way, especially when maybe some things didn't work out?
Mm. I would, what you've been explaining right now, like the different stations I had in life, I metaphorically, I think you can see it like I was climbing different mountains. So for me, kind of climbing the mountain of um, supporting starting the startup ecosystem in Austria was a mountain we saw. We were like, hey, there are a lot of people. Back then, it was like the web tech mobile world was uprising. That was like 15, 16 years ago. And we're like, hey, there are not enough people who have support by investors. There are not enough people who have communities who find co-founders. So we created a community event series, and all it needed to kick off a startup ecosystem in Austria. So it was kind of a mountain we climbed up. The same happened when I started the Chancenreich with Leo Wiedrich and Michi Ströck and others, where we realized, hey, we have people coming into the country, newcomers so-called, and a lot of them are allowed to work here and want to have a positive impact. And work doesn't only can give you meaning, but also you're part of society. You pay taxes. You create meaning in a sense. So integration is a lot easier for them. And so we were like, okay, wait, what is a possible solution? So we climbed the mountain together and learned while climbing that it needs actually a physical job fair, because a lot of them have never talked with companies, and vice versa. Companies were overwhelmed back then. That was 2016. They were like, who are these people? How can we integrate them? And so on. So we created the biggest job fair in Europe at that point with 4,000 people. So we created a few hundred jobs. So this mountain we climbed, but then I kind of left this mountain again because I was asked to run for office in the age of 27. So when I entered, I was like 28. And nobody told me climbing the mountain of politics, of like being a member of parliament in that age, what tools I need. Because I don't come from politics. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So for me, I needed a lot of, I would say, courage to do so. But at the same time, I needed people around me also kind of showing me different tools. So what I'm trying to say right now is, when being a change maker and what these different journeys have showed me, being an entrepreneur, being in politics, but at the same time now at Ashoka, in the biggest network of social entrepreneurs in the world, is that you receive tools on the way up, climbing the mountains, but then kind of coming down again, and you can reuse them. So every change-making journey you have, and that's why it's so important that we equip young people with tools, that they have the courage, that they have the network, that they have the self-confidence to take action. Because I was equipped with that also in an early age, because I tried out things. I climbed my Changemaker mountain in like starting the Let's Dance team with 15, because I love dancing. And I was like, hey, there are other girls who love dancing. Let's start. I can teach. Let's try. So that was kind of the next journey I had in Stettler von Wagram, the first mountain. And all the other mountains I told you about, I think it's really about approaching the mountain, finding the right people, but then it's okay to also leave the mountain, but be aware that the tools you gain on every mountain, every Changemaker mountain you climb, they're not lost, they're still in your backpack. And I think we all need this self-confidence, because in times like this, resilience is key. Resilience is key on so many levels. And what I mean with resilience is having a backpack with tools of saying, okay, whatever comes, it's like Viktor Frankl says, it's a matter of perspective also. And if you know and you have the self-confidence to say, hey, I have the tools, but then I also have others. I have a community. I have allies. And this is also what Ashoka is about. It's a big network of change makers. And I think that's something which has been really part of my journey in life, that I gathered these tools in a backpack, and it was not always easy, believe me. Hanging on the mountain of like in politics, sometimes I had the feeling like I'm gonna fall and break my neck.
In your TED Talk, I heard you say something about being an ally for yourself as well. How about that?
Oh, wow. You did great research. I was like, I forgot that I said that in it. I love it. Oh, wow. Yes, and yes. It's being an ally with yourself. Especially means, in my perspective, that I need to regularly check in with myself, be okay with myself, and yeah, I think it's really what I've seen, especially because I just mentioned politics and other places. I think there are a lot of people out there, and I for sure had moments like that as well, where my inner child got hurt, or like I felt hurt by other people, by situations, by failure. And then there's the question how we cope with failure, how we cope with situations where we need a break, where we need to reboot, and I think being in touch with this inner child, with my inner me, whatever you want to call it, I think is key, because what happens if we are not in touch, then it has a big effect on how we do things, especially in leadership. So we tend to kind of hurt other people then also, and it's actually my own pain. often. And I've seen that a lot. People actually hurting me, but I'm realizing, wait. It has actually not a lot to do with myself. Does it make sense? What I'm trying to say right now, it's kind of like this inner journey we have where being okay and being in love with your inner ally is the first step.
It makes so much sense, and it's so hard.
Oh, it's the highest mountain we're trying to climb. I was talking about the small mountains of like
Yeah.
starting initiatives, going into parliament. Come on, that's all peanuts when we're
Yeah.
talking about self-love.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, it has so much to do with our upbringing, our self-belief, our belief sentences, which were kind of injected by our education system, where it's often about black and white and what's true and what's not true. But in the end of the day, yeah, it's a journey where we need to be really okay with ourselves.
It makes me think of my conversation with Natalie Chan recently. She's one of the change makers that I've been connecting with from the very early days of #Impact back in Hong Kong. And I had a chance to see her here in Vienna very recently. And she was looking back on like a decade of, you can go back to that episode as well, a decade of meaningful work. And she was sharing about her work in the education space, actually, and what she has been doing there. And then at some point, oh gosh, I get goosebumps just saying that, but it made me think of what you just shared, like where she all of a sudden said, like, some parts of it was also my change making journey is almost like it's a bit of healing journey as well. And then there were some parts of her that had been healed during that work. And now she had to kind of like choose, like, am I moving forward with the work on that mountain, right? Am I going to look for another mountain? Is there something that I can now and I want you all to hear it when she says it. She says it so much more beautifully, but where she calls herself a warrior, and how now as a more healed and more grounded and more warrior, who for sure loves herself more now than maybe 10 years ago, how she can show up now making that change she wants to make, right? It's so powerful. And I've also talked to one of your fellows, Jimmy Westerheim, on the podcast
Mhm.
recently as well. And
Mhm.
there's also where I feel, I don't know, I'm just more and more, I also realize like I want, I think that's the most authentic thing you can do, like this human side, the human side of your story, right?
Mm. The thing is, especially we're in a world where link platforms like LinkedIn and others show us all the sparkle and all the titles and all, yeah, a lot of information on the surface. And I think the stories behind are the ones, or like the journey, because it's not only who you are, it's who you become while you're doing things.
Mm. Yeah.
And sometimes in life, sometimes you're a leader and sometimes you're a ladder. Like sometimes you have phases where you don't lead, but you help others to become.
Mm.
So I really believe that, and by the way, the things I just said, like I learned from my friend Nipun, where being a leader and sometimes a ladder, people have to shed the light on topics like that as well. You need people are surrounding you who are able to reflect with you.
Mm.
And I think that's so important to say, going through the different phases in life, it's on the one hand the relationship you have with yourself, but other people are always your mirror. So that's why it's so important who you surround yourself with. And people, like when I was in politics, I needed people who keep me grounded, who who are honest with me. because trust is the highest currency, like the most valued currency you have, because it's really difficult, like trust, because it's so much about power and money. And for me, it was kind of, I had Alma, also Alma Sadic back then. She was kind of my ally who I asked to run for office with me. And we ended up both being in office. And she was kind of the person who I laughed with, who I cried with, but at the same time, who was such an important mirror for me. And I think we all need these mirrors on our journey to go beyond the LinkedIn status.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really what Ashoka is also bringing to the world with the community of change makers that you're also physically bringing together regularly so that they don't just engage with each other virtually, what for sure is also very powerful, but even just these physical spaces where you're bringing them together in your workshops, in your events. And I've had the great privilege to be at, oh my God, I have to bring this up now. We're almost at the end, but I have to bring this up. This was, I mean, hands down, one of the most powerful, like, panel discussions and interactions I've experienced being at one of your Ashoka events here in Vienna that you kindly invited me to. Thank you for letting me be part of it and sit in it. It was like an off the record meeting, it was like, it was so, just everything felt so, it was intimate, yet also powerful. The connections that were made, the things that were said, like, it was just, you see it, right? It's not just you talk about it, but you really, you feel it when you're in that room. You can't really even put it, look, that's why I'm just rambling. You can't put it in words. It's more like you even feel that in your body. Like, what is created here is very special. And that is, I think, the power of just community in general. Like, because you need that to that mirror. Such a beautiful picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You already summarized it quite well. I think the power of community. I would also say it's the power of belonging, because nowadays it's really not only like if you look into the tech field, like more and more people, like social clubs are booming. There's this longing of starting to date again offline. And it's not only the
Yeah.
but the dating culture, I think, is
Yeah.
like kind of something really interesting to reflect on. People want to meet again in person. And so Ashoka has always, like, we've been there for 40 years. So what we've been doing is not only electing Ashoka fellows in more than 4,000, now in more than 100 countries, who are fellows for life. And that's something which is also important, because on the one hand, you have the stipends. That's important as well. But then it's really about helping them, the capacity building we're doing. But then furthermore, what you were saying, not only bringing our Ashoka fellows who are fellows for life because they are tackling a challenge, or, like, as I said, they're climbing a mountain, but then they're going to choose to climb another mountain, but they're still part of the community their whole life. So maybe they've been elected to be a fellow to tackle a challenge, but then decades later, they're still change makers, they're still fellows. So this is the beauty about this community, which is like a kind of, it's a garden which is growing. And on the other hand, what you were saying with, like, this face-to-face meetings, it's also, we see that with the young change makers, with the next generations, where they're like, hey, I feel lonely. And we're having this epitome of loneliness right now. So I think not only this longing of being together, to belonging, is also taking action together and seeing, hey, we have challenges, but I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And then the last piece of it is not only bringing people together, but creating spaces for meaningful conversations. Because you can always have, like, these panels where, like, important people on the panel, and then people are listening. Like, it's similar to, like, a school system we're still trying to kind of change, is that it's not only a one-way street. How can we create conversations where it's about, okay, where are the challenges? What are the solutions, and how can we all be part of it? and how can we create meaningful conversations, showing up as humans, diving in together, and leaving the spaces fueled with courage and in the best way possible, maybe with solutions we want to tackle together.
Yeah. Yeah. I already said to you before we pressed record, I want to talk for like many, many hours. I can't believe I have to let you go now, Stephanie.
Yeah.
But okay, to be continued. Can we say it like that? And of
Yes.
course, I won't let you go until you go through the quick fire round with me. Are you ready for it?
Yes. Let's do it.
Making an impact means
Taking action.
who inspires you in the way they build community?
Pooh. I get inspired every day, meeting new people who build communities. So it's not one person, many.
And what could everyone do right now after they listen to this episode to make the world an even better place?
Take a breath, because we have the honor to start with ourselves. Checking in with ourselves. And that's what I do sometimes. Just everything starts with it.
We can do it even together in this moment, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for look, I can't even say it. It was just so beautiful. Thank you so much.
I want to say thank you because I
sharing
think
this
it's
thing.
important. People like you are creating a space for meaningful conversations. And I think it's really about creating this space of meaningful conversations and then taking action together. And that can be as a social entrepreneur, like that's where I feel most at home. But at the same time, there's so many other ways out there. We're all daughters, mothers, sisters, brothers. Like we have so many different hats in our lives. And one of our amazing Ashoka fellows always says, never underestimate what we learn in our different roles we have in life, the different hats. And these are all the university of life. So as a mother, as a sister, like we have so many, such a toolkit we learn there. Let's use it to make this world a better place together. And because there's no one more educated or better, like we all have a rich, what I was telling you before, backpack with know-how. And I think it's just taking the first step and looking around, where can you start? And take a step and take action.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. This was Stephanie Cox of Ashoka Austria. You find all the links in the show notes, of course. Please connect and get in touch with Stephanie and her amazing team at Ashoka Austria as well. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining today. If you would like to get your voice heard on #impact, just send a voice note at #impact.com/story. I will include the link in the show notes as well, so you can easily find it. And if you love what you're hearing here, please tell your friends about it too. I talk to you soon. Bye.